an equal position in war as men. And without further ado, I call upon one of the Spelers as the Prime Minister to deliver her speech. Here.
Somebody close the door. It's very loud outside.
I could ask you to turn that off.
Madam Speaker, adjudicators, fellow debaters, to be good in the time of the war, you have to be good in the military. All people need to pull the card with the same strength, ladies and gentlemen. We will tie being good to war to also being good in the military. Therefore, we will look at the structure of the military, how women are represented there, and why they are wrongly represented there in the first place. Our model will deal with two levels of barriers. The first one will be the simple and pure legal barrier. In most military services, such as the United States and Great Britain, elite forces, not even on merit, do not accept women into their ranks. This is a legal barrier. The second legal barrier, and also the de facto barrier, is that things such as submarines and carriers with limited space also do not accept women because they say, we simply don't have the space to accommodate you. You need special provisions, and we say that this is a de facto barrier that is close to a legal barrier, ladies and gentlemen. And then we have the pure de facto level, and that is the chauvinism that exists today in the military, ladies and gentlemen. We will deal with this on two levels. Firstly, we call for a scrapping of all legal barriers and a merit-based entrance for all, men and women alike. We will not implement any quotas. I would like to stress this. Women in a particular environment such as the military do not need quotas. This will breed resentment among the male population, and this is the status quo, ladies and gentlemen. It does not work. Substandard women or women who are put there simply to fill the quotas are not appreciated by the military and are not good at war, ladies and gentlemen. They present a risk to the military. Any part in the military that does not work to its optimum in that contingent, in that team, or in that part of the military is a risk. We do not want to risk the lives of our men to put women in. No, thank you. The facto level of problem in the military and in war is chauvinism. It is this perceived logic that men are firstly physically stronger and secondly better bred for the military life, ladies and gentlemen. That they are better in stressful environments, that they are better in zones of war. We will have two arguments that will disprove this and prove why women should have an equal opportunity in war, military, and why this will make for a stronger military and a stronger defense system. Our first argument will be that the nature of the military has changed fundamentally, ladies and gentlemen. From the times when this was solely a conquering force to a time where this is now peacekeeping, peace rebuilding, and things like that. And then we will have the argument of the civil-military relationship. And in the civil-military relationships comes the key part of our model, ladies and gentlemen. For the need to remove chauvinism from the military, we need to get cases of suspected chauvinism out of the uniformed code of military justice and military courts and into the civil courts, ladies and gentlemen. We will put them to civil courts because otherwise it gets swept under the rug in the military. And we need to protect this, and we need to make women an integral part and protect them so that we can make them better at war and that they can then protect us. Go on.
You identified the problem of today's status quo chauvinism. How your plan is solving this?
Oh, I will tell you. The integral part of the chauvinism is my first argument, is that the nature of war has changed. Firstly, women have become more progressive and more adept. They have discovered their physical abilities, which makes them on merit key for elite forces, for forces such as any contingent in the military. And secondly, there are integral parts to what women can bring to the army that men cannot. Women have, in this changed context, going from the conquering force to a peacekeeping force, to a mediator, they have specific knowledge. A, they can protect the female population better than men can. Even an institution as revered by myself as the United Nations has been under attack for soldiers sexually harassing women. This is why the perfect example for the change in this situation is the very strong and very accurate with your gun. This is also a war for the hearts and minds of people, and this is where women are better. They can win the population over, and they can win the wars that are not conventional in our wisdom. Go.
You speak of the success of a contingent with only one sex, yet we see when we've had a test contingent with two sexes that there were issues with relationships.
Of course, and these are the issues of chauvinism ingrained in the military, ladies and gentlemen. This is because the military protects its men. Any military that has 95% of men and 5% of women will say, yeah, well, you were rough to her, you didn't pass her through basic training because you had issues with women, but we'll do it internally. We will not ruin your career. The woman will just find something better for her anyway. This is the problem that the military has today. This is why our wars are not as optimal as they could be. The problem of American forces in Iraq is that they are too aggressive, ladies and gentlemen. We say adding women to the mixture will make them a better military and better at war. Now let's go to the second argument, the civil-military relations, ladies and gentlemen. We believe that if we put something that is perceived as internal laundry washing by the military out of their judicial system and into the civil judicial system, it will open up the relationship between the military and the population at large. This will also make them a lot better at representation. If you have, it's just like the parliament, the better representation of the people you have, the better legitimacy the military has, and the better you are at solving for problems, the better you are with connecting to people. Now, the biggest alienation and why we are not perceived as good in war and why our military is perceived as to be separate of our society is that there is no link between them. It is this resentment by the public and this resentment by the women in the military that the military is a chauvinistic society. We have to say that in today's model, we simply have to bring it out. Let time win will take too long. We've been doing it for 20 to 30 years, depending on the military you look at. And Israel has the great policy. Israel has taken legislation to legislate for women. They have taken legislation to equalize them. We do not want to go to quotas, ladies and gentlemen. We simply want to make it a merit. Israel does not care whether you're a man or a woman. You will serve. And that is our case today. Thank you.
Moving on to the other side of the table.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To be good in time of war. As we will show you in our first argument, war is nothing about being good. A state of war is something extreme, where our first and primary concern should be the safety of our citizens, of our soldiers. In our second argument, we will analyze the fundamental difference between men and women, although the government team is simply disregarding it. And in our third argument, we will analyze the natural consequences, the point of abuse, the point of problem today's government proposal brings that will be done by our second speaker. But what did we hear from the side of the government today? We heard that there was a legal barrier of women not getting in the elite force. It is an interesting thing that they justified the female success in the elite force with examples from peacekeeping troops, which basically have no real correlation between elite force and peacekeeping troops, because being an elite force and being a peacekeeper who basically stands on the borders and watches out for people not to get shot, we have a huge difference here. Furthermore, what they stated was that they want to change the military judicial system. They have not specified what they want to do. Do they want the whole military judicial procedure to become a civil court procedure? Do they want all top secret operations to be pointed out to the public? Do they want all the bad laundry washing when two generals don't like each other and file a suit between themselves for all this to come into the public? What we say that this will bring to the point where the military will lose support from the side of the public. And that is the argument why military courts are kept in secret. But what did they talk about? They talked about the nature of the military and how it's changed. They never showed us how the nature of the military changed. They simply stated that it's changed. This is not enough for the opposition to accept such a proposal, because even if the nature of the war has has changed. It's still about killing people. It's still about having as much stamina as you can. It's still about enduring as much pain as you can. It's still about having as much concentration as you can. And they have not shown us, no thank you, how women are able to do that. Because although Israel has got all these also great policies, it's still an interesting thing that barely one woman on 20 or 30 men gets into the elite force, which practically means that Israel does not have practically any female members of the elite force. No thank you. Furthermore, let's get to their second argument, which is civil-military relationship, in which they state the thing that they will put all the military procedures, or they did not specify, in the civil judicial system, which I have already dealt with. So no, thank you, madam. So let's get to the positive matter of the opposition, which also directly negates the point of the government today. What I'm arguing in my first argument is that the state of war is a special thing, and that the responsibility of the state is slightly twisted, so to speak, in the time of the state of war. No, thank you, madam. Because the responsibility of the state, either way you look at it, is to ensure that its citizens suffer as little as possible. And when we take a look at the fundamental differences, as we will see in my second argument, between the men and women, we see that if we want to respect this responsibility of the state, the government's proposal is not the way to go. No, thank you. It is very nice, and I salute the government team for wanting to fight for equal opportunities in times of war. But in order for them to win this debate, they have to prove beyond not only reasonable, but beyond any doubt that women will be as capable in the war as men. Yet the government has not taken one step to this path. So from that point on, we see that when considering how the state of war looks like and the responsibility of the state, we see that the government has no case. Yes, ma'am.
Don't you believe that it is the responsibility of the government to give everyone the opportunity to prove merit? We're not giving them the
Yes, madam. Thank you. Thank you. This brings me neatly to my second argument, in which I argue the fundamental difference between men and women. For a short time, about 2 years ago, in the American Army, there has been a social experiment, so to speak, where they have given the chance for women to prove their capabilities of going into the elite force. They said that for a certain amount of time, they're going to include them into the Army solely on merit base. It is an interesting fact that each and every woman that applied for that program had to go to the infirmary because of overburden, because of either mental overburden, because of either physical overburden, just by doing the same physical exercises as men had to do. And this point itself proves that when considering merit-based, this will not solve the problem and does not give us the reason to propose the government's plan. There has been a research done 3 years ago by the US military, which has proven that women in average have 20% less stamina, which we on the side of the opposition are not prepared to accept when accepting women into military. It has proven that in order to achieve the same results, women in average have to carry 7 pounds less in their backpack in order to run as long as men can. No, thank you. 25% of the female concentration and performance lowered during the time of menstruation, during the time of female periods. And yes, the government team might say we're going to accept them merit-based, but the fact is that when a female's contribution to the war falls for a whole quarter during 5 or 6 days in a month, we are not willing to put either our women to that risk or either our other soldiers. Yes, ma'am.
And we consider physically less strength, we believe they have strengths such as being peaceful, such as being cooperative, that will help our women in the military, not just in the forces, in the entire military.
This brings us to the chauvinistic point. Well, let's ask ourselves, who is really chauvinistic in this debate? Because the government is the only one that is talking about fundamental differences between men and women without any research behind it, because they simply claim on the basis of their prejudices that women are more peaceful, that women are more capable of taking care of people, and we simply are not prepared to agree with that. We say that men and women are equal, but when considering research, when considering physical capabilities, we see that there are some fundamental differences, not based on prejudice, but based on true research. The other thing we might want to consider is the mindset in which men and women are raised in. We see that the parental input from the side of the women has been proven from from the side of the Frankfurt School sociologists is much greater than from the side of the men, which also brings us that when a man has got a child at home and when a woman, her performance falls drastically. So what have we talked about? A government which doesn't know what it's talking about, and when considering when they are going to consider women unmarried, we should not accept them just because of the safety of them and of male soldiers also. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And moving back to the other side, Bella.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the floor. Now, not only does Philip not live in the 21st century, but maybe more in the 19th century or the beginning of the 20th century, where there were no women in the army in any country in this globe. And now, well, over time, things have changed. Things have changed in Israel, things have changed, for example, in Cuba, and in many other countries. And, well, apparently for a reason. Apparently because some parts of the world have moved to a point to actually accept that women can do more than they were actually destined to do. That women can do things that men can also do. And especially that women can have capabilities and are capable in ways in which men are not. And these are abilities that are more important maybe in the 21st century wars than in the wars of the 20th century, where you basically really have to have the physical strength, which we believe today is not necessarily so important. Now, let's talk about Philip's speech, and I'll have a few points of rebuttal here. Then I'll return to our constructive matter. I'll talk about the checks and balances in the military, or actually a lack of them, and I'll talk about how there's absolutely no alternative to this plan. Now, first of all, the opposition had a problem with us not changing the problem of chauvinism. Now, what we're saying, this might be true, because this is so deeply rooted in the army and in the society, that we're saying, well, it might be true, we're not solving for this. What we are solving for is that in the end, women will get into the army. And we're saying, well, this goes this way. If you have them in, if they prove themselves capable, and if they show some results, then in the end, men will probably accept them. Just accept from a man-based society, to accept women without having any results might not really be the best way to go. Now, let's talk about the legal barrier, and that we have not presented any correlation between peacekeeping and elite forces, and that therefore women should not be allowed in. Now, first of all, apparently some countries have women in the elite forces, like Philip has said in Israel. So apparently women can do a really good job there. Now, the second thing is what Philip has nicely accused us of, is that, well, you know, they can be in peacekeeping operations because that they're peaceful and can do all this stuff. But then later on in his speech, he accused us that we have no research or evidence that women actually have these abilities of being more peaceful, of having better communication skills. Because while he admitted in his first point that they are good for peacekeeping missions, he has admitted just the thing that we have been claiming all the time, that they have abilities that men might do not have. Now, talking second of all about their misunderstanding or bad understanding of our plan, especially the second part of basically transferring cases of chauvinism, not to have them in front of the military courts, because right now it falls under their jurisdiction, but actually under normal civil courts in front of the state. Now, first of all, I don't know what you're talking about, like having top secret things and revealing information, because first of all, we're not talking about army operations or anything like that. The only thing that we're doing is, if there's a case of chauvinism, it should go before a civil court. Why? Because there's no checks and balances in the army, and it's something that I'm gonna talk about later. No. Now, the next thing is, he was talking about how a soldier should be, you know, strong, with muscles, someone who can fight, someone who can torture and everything like that. Now, in the 21st century, we do not have this wars between states, not in Europe and not in the US. The people that are in the army there are fighting overseas, they're fighting in peacekeeping operations, they're fighting when they're changing the situation in a country like Afghanistan, like Sudan. So what we're saying is that these people are not just who have to torture other people, but maybe promote peace, maybe actually go towards a more peaceful solution, maybe actually shed less blood than men would do. And what we're saying is, this is where women are capable. Philip has accused us of not showing you anything that women will be more capable of doing than men. Now what we're saying is, as long as you do not prove that the only thing you need in the military to survive is strength and stamina, as long as you have not proved your case. Because as long as you admit that women can be more communicative, that they're more peaceful, especially in peaceful operations, then you have actually supported our case, in which say we need women because they have these special abilities. No. Now let's talk about this man versus women and that they can, do less, can't run that far, have to carry 7 pounds less. Now, first of all, we don't need that much time in the 21st century. Surprise, surprise, we have cars. Surprise, surprise, we have airplanes. You do not really need all these physical abilities. And especially in the elite forces, you're not necessarily fighting on the border all the time, but you're also planning actions. You're sitting maybe in an office or something like that. What we're saying is, well, in the 21st century, we've come over that idea that you have to run 40 kilometers to do something, because apparently we have other ways to do that. And now let's talk about this example that Philip has presented of women being accepted to elite force to basically have this experiment with them. Now, first of all, he was talking about overburning women. Yeah, who has overburdened them? The people above them, and the people above them were men. And secondly, that was such a short-term experience that when they decided to do it, it was not really enough time to get women who were to that point capable of getting them in. So they just had any women in that experiment, basically not having those who really would be capable, but just having, well, a decent number of them. And what we're saying is, this is not good, because this was not merit-based. They just took random people and put them in there. We're saying that is wrong. If you have a merit-based system, then this will basically give women the opportunity to prove themselves. Now, coming to my 2 constructive points in this one. One is really short and I've mentioned it already, which is the checks and balances in the military. And we're saying in front of their courts, there's absolutely no checks and balances. Why? Because first of all, most of the judges, the jury, and everything else is probably 95% men. Second of all, because there's this community pressure, because it's such a chauvinistic society, for a judge to actually say, yes, this woman has been molested, is probably not a really likely thing to do. And because of this community pressure in the army itself, which we believe does not exist in civil courts, well, we believe that maybe transferring this case would be a really good idea. And now, the last thing is, do we really have any alternative to that? Well, doing anything less than that keep us in the status quo, where women are being discriminated in the European Union or the United States, where on the other hand, they have proved themselves pretty capable in Israel. Well, maybe there is 1 woman to 40 men, but generally there are less women in the army, so basically having a 1 to 40 ratio is probably just a reflection of how many women they're going to the army and how many women do not go into the army. If we do even less than we have now, then we'll go back into this 19th century situation of the first opposition. And if we do anything more than that, like implement quotas or actually force the men to be non-chauvinistic, then we will have resentment, then we will have non-acceptance, then we will have the same things and arguments as men have when you have quotas for women in Poland. They're not capable, get the best man for the job. What we're saying is, in the first proposition is, in the 21st century, in war, sometimes the best man for the job is a woman. And because of all the things we presented, because we showed you there's no checks and balances in the army, because there are so chauvinistic, because we do not believe we can do all of this with a single plan, but rather have to go step by step, because we believe that marriage are the only thing that should matter in the army. We'll be back to those.
Thank you very much. Maya.
Men and women are equal on one side, but on the other side, they say that women are more peaceful. What we ask ourselves is, are they introducing a new criteria, which is how nice you are, which will mean if you're nice, that will make you go or be accepted in the army. And this is one of the fundamental problems of the government. They believe that being nice is enough in state of war. We believe that's not enough, and secondly, it's a chauvinistic claim. So basically, in this debate, we have to ask ourselves 2 fundamental questions. The first question is the government solving the problem they identified? Is the government solving the problem of chauvinism? And secondly, do equal opportunities the government is proposing actually overweigh the harm done to the population, to the army, and to the women themselves? And this is the 2 basic questions I'll answer in my speech. And then I'll present the third point of it, third argument from the opposition. answering this, the second point. So let me go to the debate itself. First, the government identified the problem of chauvinism. And basically what we say is they did not ever show us how are they actually solving the problem of chauvinism. They might be talking about some change from the up to the bottom-up change, but we believe that they still did not show us why would this happen only if you put women in. Because basically what the second speaker was talking about, even if we do not solve the problem of chauvinism, well, we still have them in, and through the time we will actually solve this problem. What we say is basically that during this time that you're supposedly solving the problem of chauvinism, you're actually harming the women. No, what we have shown you is that basically they are not as physically capable as men, and what will that mean is they'll be burned out if they would like to be equally capable, or if they would to be able to fill the criteria set. But secondly, what we say, okay, if you implement this proposal, that means you'll put pressure on the generals, on the army, that we have to become equal, that we have to have more women in the army. What that means is that generals will be tended to accept more women just not to be seen chauvinistic. And what that means is basically that we will have even less capable women in the army just to be seen nice. And this is a problem that the government is not solving, sir.
In their plan, you stated that women would be accepted on merit base.
Yeah, but what we say is on merit base in Israel means 1 woman of 30. That means that the general that will have this kind of a ratio will still be seen chauvinistic, and that's why they'll be tended to accept more women, and that will be overall bad for the army because it will not fill the criteria. And secondly, it will be bad because those women will be less capable, and that's why they'll put a bad picture of all women, and this again is something they're not addressing. Now, what the government is saying is that military has changed. This is their big presumption. What we see is indeed military has changed. That's why today we do not have only men's military. But what we say is war did not change. Military has changed, and this means basically that now we accepted women in places where they can actually fully be women. But in the war, the state of war, that did not basically change because you still have a lot of bloodshed and killing. We cannot accept them. No, thank you. So basically, the 2 points that are in today's debate are basically the capability of the soldier. And we have shown you here that females are just less capable. Further on, it was refuted by Spila that basically we're lying when giving you our own information about how actually they were less capable on practice. She said, oh, we took just random women. The research took just random women. What we say, no, it did not took only random women. It took female soldiers, and these female soldiers were less capable, were doing worse than men. Further on, we have shown you that basically it's the role of the government to assure that their army will be optimal. And with the proposal of the government is not assuring this. So basically, we should have shown you that the capability of the soldiers is lessened. But even if some women would be equally capable, or even if some women would fill the criteria, we will show you further on that there is a harm to the society and to the women themselves, and that's why we cannot accept their proposal. And this leads me to the third argument. It's the harm to the woman. So basically, the government is identifying the problem of chauvinism, but not solving it. They're just letting women in, and by that, they're allowing all the abuse to actually happen to these women. They're actually sacrificing these women for some possible change in the future. This is something that just cannot be accepted by the government opposition. Basically, we have 3 points here. Firstly, it's the abuse of women by the soldiers, and we believe that it was shown through the examples that during practice and also during the stage of war, it was indeed shown that male soldiers raped this happened in Iraq when 12 soldiers without a command to save the female soldiers, and 8 of them died, and the captured women did not survive. And this is the problem. They play men, and they do not do anything. They behave irrational. And this is basically the problem. They're not solving the problem of chauvinism, and they're not justifying this equal opportunities. War is special, and we have to implement special measures then. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
7:28.
Moving on to the second half. Andrew, here.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm a weakling. I'm kind of a wimp. I don't work out. I can't run very long. It's just who I am. Now, opposition throws you the statistic that most women are of lower physical ability than men, that most women just can't handle it. What we're saying is that they won't make it into the military. Those with the merit, those with the ability will make it into the military, and we should not be denying them this opportunity. First government talked a lot about how this is going to help benefit the military. What I'm going to extend into is how it's going to benefit the women. How, by giving them the opportunity of the balance of give and take, how giving them the opportunity, the equal opportunity to join the military, to prove that they are equal with men, they will benefit. Now, before I go into that, I'm going to rebut some of their points. They said, I already covered the merit base. They're saying that general should start taking in more women because they don't want to look, don't want to look racist, don't want to look sexist. But this is not the case at all. It's merit-based. There are no quotas. They're not going to be punished if they don't accept a certain amount of women. They're just going to accept the women who are capable of doing it. So this is not a problem. Now, they said that war has not changed. This is not true at all. War has changed. We are now fighting in villages. We are now fighting around civilians. We are no longer getting into lines and shooting at each other. So the benefits that they said that women bring are applicable. Now, I'm going to move into my extension. Balance of give and take. Okay, when we enter a society, in order to receive the equal benefits of being into that society, you need to give into that society as much as you are taking. You need to be an equal member of that society. And we are not doing that right now. What does society value? Society values life. Life is one of the most important things in society, and we try to protect that dearly. Now, what else do we value? We value ideals, sometimes more than life, which is why war happens. Sometimes the right of choice, the right to free speech, become more important to life. So what happens then? Some people are asked to make the ultimate sacrifice. Some people are asked to risk and give up their lives for these ideals. And right now what we are doing is we are giving that opportunity to give the ultimate sacrifice to society, to men. And we're saying that this is wrong. We need to give that equal opportunity to both men and women so that women can have the equal opportunity to give the ultimate sacrifice. Yes.
We give that chance to the best in between our lines. And when 200 volunteers perform less able than men in the military,
we give that opportunity to the best, which is why our plan is merit-based. We're allowing the best to get into the military. We're allowing the best to be capable of giving that ultimate sacrifice. Now, why will this benefit women? I'm going to go into their question of why does it solve the problem of chauvinism? First off, it solves the problem of chauvinism because we are giving them this opportunity for ultimate sacrifice. Now, what is that going to result in? That is going to result in a higher standing in society. They're not going to be looked at as equal with men instead of being seen as slightly less inferior because they're not able to give that ultimate sacrifice. Now, where are we going to see these equal opportunities? It's going to affect a lot of places. It's going to affect the political field, where people who have had military service, where people who have been receive medals for serving in war are seen as capable leaders. They're seen as capable leaders because they have risked that ultimate sacrifice. They have shown dedication to society, and they are respected for that. And we need to give that opportunity to women as well as men.
Sir,
Yes.
except in front lines, we already have basically in the majority of military women, and still
Exactly,
not
that's-
solving the problem of chauvinism.
Exactly. They are not in the front lines. They are not given the opportunity to give that ultimate sacrifice, and that is what we need to give them. We need to give them the opportunity to equally give into society, to be an equal members of society by offering this ultimate sacrifice. Now, we also see in business that women are usually paid less than men. Why? That's because of the stigma that they are slightly less than men, which is what we need to solve. And our motion is a strong step towards solving that. No, thank you. Now, what else will this solve? This will also solve the women perspectives on themselves. They keep throwing the statistic that you are less than men. You are less than men. Society should not be sending this message. We should not be sending the message that women are less than men no matter what, ignoring the fact that, hey, some women may be more capable than men, they may have more stamina than men, but on the average, you don't. So we're just going to ignore you. We're going to tell you that you are less without giving you the chance. This is wrong. We need to be sending the message that we look at men and women equally, that they are equal, and that they do need to be receiving the same opportunities.
Point of information.
No, thank you. So this is going to better the perspective of women from society, and is also going to better the perspective of women themselves. They are now going to see themselves as equals rather than seeing themselves as less. Some women do not reach their full potential because of the stigma that they are less, because they accept, hey, I should be a secretary, I should be a housewife, because society tells me that I am less than men. This is the wrong message. We shouldn't be sending this message. So we should be voting for this motion because it is merit-based. It's not going to weaken the military. It's actually going to benefit the military, as First Government has shown. And this is going to benefit women in society. This is going to bring them to a more equal level because we're allowing them to give the ultimate sacrifice. We're allowing them to be equal participants in society, which is very important because it will lead to more and equal opportunities with men. They will have better chances in the political field to be political active leaders in their society. They will have better chances of economic in the business receiving the same pay as men because now they will be seen as equals. And this is the message we need to send, and that is why we should vote for this motion.
Jimmy?
Yes. Chauvinism, chauvinism, chauvinism. How are they going to solve it? By giving women the chance to make the ultimate sacrifice. What we're going to extensively talk about in our extension is how actually having women in the military degrades performance and how this chauvinism will only be increased. Why? Because it will give the message that women are irrational and that they are messing with men and degrading the performance of the military. But before I deal with my extension, first of all, I'm going to deal with what is left standing in the debate, mainly with the extension and what their third speaker has come up with, and then we'll go to our extension, which talks about sexual tensions and how they basically degrade the performance of the whole military. Now, we've had an interesting point about how generals, if there's no quota, they won't feel any pressure. Yet we see that the most visible thing are the statistics, are the figures. And when someone is getting promoted or demoted, we see that the figures will surely be visible, and that is something that the people who are in charge, no thank you, will see and are going to deal with. So we see that there's by default a huge pressure by the leaders and all the other people in power to see great figures, and that is actually a part of the social pressure. So we see that there is actually an implicit pressure being put onto the generals, not just that the quotas solve that issue. Now, in their extension, we've had that only men can sacrifice themselves, but there's an underlying assumption that is just faulty here. It's not about it's not about sacrificing yourself. It's not about yourself getting killed, but it's about as little people as possible getting killed for a just cause. No, thank you. And we see that the emphasis here is on an efficient military that doesn't get people killed unnecessarily, that doesn't have too many sacrifices unnecessarily, and that, yes, please.
Do you honestly believe that there are some women out there who are, that all women are completely incapable of doing what a man can? Honestly.
No, as I'll speak extensively in my extension, I'm going to tell you why sexual relationships do degrade the performance of the military, and that is a major point. I'm just going to note it down via white here, and that will be something extensively talked about. So we see that the underlying assumption about that sacrifice is good, that getting killed is good, that having more social power because you're getting killed is a faulty one. We see that it's about saving lives, not getting people killed. It's not about sacrificing yourself and unnecessary loss of life. So this extension does fall as soon as we establish that the military is there to save people, not to let them kill themselves unnecessarily. So I have great pleasure that now I can deal with my extension so extensively because there are so little points standing. Now, why do sexual tensions degrade the performance of the military? And that is something that, no thank you, that is something that the socialist states have recognized quite early. They gave all the soldiers Brom so that they wouldn't have sexual desires. They gave them Brom on daily basis, and they did recognize that sexual desires are something bad. That is also the thing that the US Army has recognized when they don't want women and men on a small carrier where there are 6,000 men, possibly a few women as they propose, interacting in a small corridor where everybody has up to 2 square meters of space to sleep, and perhaps even 2 people are sleeping on the same bed, and all that mingling. And that is something that they already do recognize. So we see that the sexual tensions, perhaps on the front line, when we have a very close relationship between the people, we see that jealousy, sexual relationship, and all the stuff that comes with sexual desires is not something to have in there, and that is something that most super forces do already realize, because they see that people mingling too much, that people having all those instincts that shouldn't be there are distracting for the soldiers. I'll take the second argument. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So are you blaming women for sexual tensions? Are you saying we shouldn't give them equal opportunity as men?
Well, obviously, we see that the impact is still huge, and we need to look at what is more important. Equal opportunities, unnecessary loss of life. Now, we see that the unnecessary loss of life does probably come higher than the multi point of unequal opportunities to get yourself killed and get yourself sacrificed in a military warfield. So we see that the main point in the military is about how good you perform and how good the military does actually perform and do all that stuff. So we see, no thank you, and we see as the first government has already talked about this point when Spila herself talked about how the civil courts will deal with molestation. So they do themselves recognize that there is a possible issue going on here once we've got all those relationships in those tense conditions, on that small carrier, in the battlefield, and all those tense situations which are really, really problematic. So we see that not only is the performance of the military impacted, we also see that, as the first government has talked about in their third argument, we see that also women are discriminated against, are exposed to possible rape and all kinds of stuff that only further degrades the performance of the military. So we see that it is actually very, very important that we have a cohesive military that does work together, that does save lives and doesn't deal with equal opportunities so as to be nice so as to allow women to sacrifice themselves, so as to have women who feel better about themselves, but that we need a military that does do something, that is efficient, that does solve problems, and that doesn't get people killed unnecessarily. So what have I done in my speech? First of all, I've extensively been able to talk about my extension. That gave me great pleasure about how this actually degrades the performance of the military. We've also dealt about with the general's issue of the implicit pressure, and we've seen that this is not something that we do want in our military, and that we've seen that that is something that the militaries have also recognized on the example of the socialist states and all the major superpowers. So the only thing I can now do is I beg you to oppose the motion and save the women and have an efficient military. Thank you.
And to close the case for the government side, Elia, please.
Gentlemen, when there is something wrong with our society, we don't just leave it alone. We say there's a problem, we need to fix it. Yes, there are going to be consequences, but we need to fix it. There are principles that we need to stand for. Ladies, oh yeah, I forgot about you. You're important too. I'll move on to that. What I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to talk about rebuttal. Exactly what the second opposition has brought forward and why this is not something that they should be standing on in the first place, and definitely not something that you want to be voting for. Then I want to go in and talk about the short-term and the long-term effects of this plan that First Government has so wonderfully brought to us. Now, first of all, they talked about degrading performance, and that is because of sexual relationships. Well, I'm sorry, but we're not all in high school. Some of us have the maturity to choose our relationships. Some of us have the maturity to say that I have an instinct, I have a desire to be sexually attracted to this person, but my responsibility is with the military. We do have that ability to say no, and we exercise it all the time. No, thank you. A great example of that is when we actually fast, we have an instinct to feed our body. We have an instinct to go out and say, I am going to feed myself and give my body fuel. However, sometimes we just say no. Why? Because we have principles, because we have reasons to, because there are consequences if you don't. No, thank you. Now, another principle that they're standing on is that women equal sexual tension. That's sort of like a rapist point of view, isn't it? That, well, she asked for it. Well, it's her fault. Ladies and gentlemen, that's not something you should be standing on whatsoever.
Well, Mrs. Commissioner,
Yes.
how is it fair for a raped woman not to be prosecuted under her domestic laws?
I don't think I quite understand where that point's coming from. Maybe if I go on further, I will answer it for you. But when it comes down to sexual relationships and the fact that that's going to be degrading, we aren't all in high school. We have the ability to say no. We have choices that we can make. And that's a choice that we will be making. Now, when we're talking about the moral dilemma that we're faced here in society, if you'd like to explain that, I'd love it.
Yet we obviously see that young men have the highest possible testosterone levels, and no matter what kind of a perspective that is, it is still a fact that sexual desires when you're in the military are extremely high.
Thank you. Sexual levels that we can still say no to, and there are things that you can do about that. Now, we're moving on to the short term and the long term. In the short term, there is obviously a moral dilemma. Short term, there is something that needs to be fixed about it. We don't say, well, we can't fix it very well right now, so we're just not going to fix it. We need to say, women and men are equal. In all cases, they are treated equally. They have the same opportunities no matter what. We're saying they're merit-based. Thank you, sir. If you, as a woman, and you, as a male, have the same capabilities, you should have the same opportunities as the other. For one female, for opposition to say that because of your sex, because of your gender, you do not have the same opportunities as this man right over here, because you are female, and that's the only reason why. Ladies and gentlemen, that is simply wrong with our society. We need to be fixing that. No, thank you. So in the short term, we need to make a stand for what is right. And what they brought up as short-term problems would be the pressure of the general. Well, I'm pretty confident that if I was the only girl in the semifinal, you would not vote for me because I was the only girl, because you were pressured. You would look at my merits. Are my arguments good? Am I making sense? No, thank you. Is my structure good? Is my style good? That's what you'd be looking at. Not my breasts, or the fact that I don't have a testosterone level like the other males that might be in this room. No, you'd be looking at merits, and that's what no thinking generals would be looking at. Pressure might be, might be, but it would be the same pressure that a judge would have in a room with all males and only one female. And it's not something that we should be standing against this motion for. No thank you. Another problem they said is that women are just incapable, and we've already talked about that in our ascension. They're incapable right now because they're told by society over and over and over again, you are incapable. Well, mentally, that's going to have an effect on you. If you are told over and over that you are equal, you are capable, you can do this, then mentally it's going to affect you, and you are going to be able to do that. Yes?
But when women in the military, 200 of them, got the chance to perform the same exercises as men, none of them were able to complete them.
Thank you, and that leads me perfectly into my long-term effects. Short-term, women are being told by the society that they aren't capable, so they can't do it. Long-term, what are the benefits that we're looking at here? This really pulls into the extension that government talked about, and that is the benefit to women. If we are saying, as a government, making a stand and saying, you are a woman, you are capable, and if your merits are good enough, because of your breasts, we will not hold you back. We will let you do what you are capable of doing. And by making that stance, we are saying you are capable and helping to form our society around this idea, which is going to bring about nothing, which is going to bring about changes. And one of these positive changes is going to be that little girls are going to grow up saying, there is nothing that I can't do because I'm a female. I can do anything I want to. My government believes in me. My society is beginning to see that. And that's something that we need to make a stand for, is this thinking, change in society. Long term, these benefits far outweigh the harms that short term opposition has talked about.
For your information.
Yes?
To prove your case, you have to show us how time of war is equal to time of peace.
I think that it was very clearly stated that we're looking at merits. What you have talked about this whole time is this one example that first government brought up, that oftentimes women to the table in our society bring the ability to be peacekeepers. If you've been listening to my last argument, I stated that we, as a society, are telling women that they aren't capable. And what we need to be doing is say that they are capable, because if there is one woman who is capable in our society, and because of her breasts, she cannot do what she's capable of doing, that is wrong. That is something that we should be standing against. She needs that opportunity because she deserves it, because of the merit. And that is the long-term effects. The other long-term effects that they haven't even touched upon is being paid less. Women are generally paid less, and this is going to help fix that, because it's going to tell our society that they are capable and bring about change in the long run. The women's perspective on themselves, again, they're growing up believing that they can do that. There's nothing that they are incapable of doing. The government believes in them, their society is beginning to believe in them as well. And the political field, the fact that they can be on an equal level with John McCain or with John Kerry with the Purple Heart, that is very important to all women in the political system. Ladies and gentlemen, the short-term and the long-term benefits far outweigh the harms that opposition has brought forward. Women need to have the opportunity, because in our democracy, in our society, that's what we stand for. We stand for equality. But right now in the status quo, it's not equal. It is hypocritical.
Thank you very much. We close the entire debate. Simon.
We've heard from the start of the second opposition today, the second government today, that we are not all in high school. Well, but I believe we are all still human beings. There are still instincts that are driving us, and we are still the ancestors of animals. Well, what my speech will be about is the first, why women should not be accepted, a priori not accepted into the military. Secondly, I will be speaking about their plan and what was recognized as a problem on the side of the government today, and how they are not solving it at all. And thirdly, I will be speaking about the underlying principles from one side and from the other one. Firstly, about the a priori point. Well, yeah, I guess we have accepted the points from this debate that women and men are just not equal.
they are different. And we say, it is not bad that they are different. Well, we say by giving them possibility to get to the army, we are not getting them the best possible possibility. Because we are not, by actually saying them, no, you should not go to the army, this will provide no thank you, will provide more good for the army. Why? Because in fact, if there are women in the army, this decreases performance of men in the army. If they are not there, this decreases tensions. No, thank you. Because the fact that the government is unable to recognize is that military is not only about how fast you can run and how precise you can shoot. It is a much more complex system. The whole mentality of the military is important. And sexual desires are something that is present in man. The sex drive is a fact, and men are driven by it. And if women are present in the army, the man will be driven by the sex drive, and the performance will decrease. We have had some research which was mentioned before in the debate, and actually they are establishing divided contingents of men and women in the army. Why? Because when they are together, the men and women cannot perform as good as possible. And also there are possibilities for abuse and rape and so back and so forth. And all this was discussed in debate before me, the second. And I think that it was clearly established on the side of my co-debater that, in fact, if women are in the army, this decreases in performance of men. Second debater.
You said that there's a possibility of rape and so on. Isn't that a possibility outside of the military too? We don't become sex-driven.
Yeah, but I think that performance of men in the military is a bit more important as performance of men in a certain company or in the street or somewhere else. I think that in the combat, the performance of man is actually about whether they will die or they will survive, whether their country will survive or not. It's about the security of the citizens. And now let me continue with my second point, which is about what is the problem. The problem they have defined is the chauvinism of men, and what was their plan is they will remove all the legal barriers for the women to get into the army. But what grants from the side of the government that women will actually get into the army? Because only if women will actually get into the army, this chauvinism will be likely to decrease. Only if women will actually be able to perform as good as men, then men's chauvinism will decrease. But women will not perform as good as men because they are not as capable as men. No, thank you. So in fact their plan is not giving women into the army. They're thus not solving the problem of chauvinism. Thus the men will not accept women any better than they did so far. And now going on to my third point, which is about the underlying principles from one side and from the other. No, thank you. Well, what they have strived for throughout the whole debate is the equal opportunities of men and women. We should get the women a priori chance to get into the army, no matter any other fact, irrespective of all other aspects, no matter. They have only taken into account their performance in the field. They have not taken into account how they will be able to perform into the much more complex system of the army, how their presence in the army will draw consequences in the army. Second page.
Isn't that their performance right there? When they go through training, we do look at how they deal with stress, just like how we deal with, we look at men, if they can deal with their stress?
Well, but yeah, I answered your point already. When mass sex drive is something that affects them. If women are in the army, this will affect their performance. However you take it, you are just denying that men and women are driven by a sex drive. Oh, come on, where are you living? We're living in the 21st century. That's a medical fact. So, however, what what we have been struggling for on the other side of the chamber is actually the security of our soldiers, is the security of the country that the soldiers are fighting for. And we have been struggling for the best possible performance, no matter who, however, we are on the side of the opposition, we are thinking much broadly. We are not taking into account only women's and their interests. We are actually taking into account the interests of the whole society, of the whole country. Because if women are not in the military, the men's military will perform better, as it was established on the point of sexual drive facts. I think we have clearly established our points about why women in the military will decrease and will have bad consequences on the performance of men in the military, and that is why it is a priori reason for them not to be there. And secondly, they are not solving their problem of chauvinism in the army at all, because they are not giving women in the army actually. And thirdly, the underlying principles which are here on the side of the opposition are much more important, not going only for the women but also for the whole society as such, and that's why I think the opposition should win here. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. I thank all the speakers for their speeches. I think you deserve a round of applause.